Mr. President, it's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Foreign Minister, preside over this important meeting of the Security Council. Pakistan congratulates you on Algeria's successful presidency and for convening and participating in this timely debate on the grave situation in the Middle East, especially Palestine. We also thank Secretary General Antonio Guterres for his insightful briefing and his wise recommendations. Mr. President, over the past 15 months, we have witnessed the widespread destruction and massive human suffering caused by Israel's wanton attacks in Gaza, killing over 46,000, mostly women and children. We have witnessed the most egregious violations of international law, including international humanitarian law, which many have concluded amount to genocide. Israel's war has spread to the West Bank, to Lebanon, to Syria, to Iran, as well as Yemen. The wreckage caused in the Middle East is the consequence of Israel's expansive, illegal, and unacceptable conception of its so-called right to self-defense. It is also the consequence of the impunity which Israel has enjoyed to conduct attacks and aggression beyond any legal or moral proportion against the helpless Palestinians whose territory it occupies in flagrant violation of the principles of the UN Charter and international law. After defying the resolutions of the Security Council and the General Assembly, the injunctions of the International Court of Justice, and the appeals of its friends and patrons, Israel has finally agreed to a ceasefire arrangement due to a particular deadline. This ceasefire could have been achieved many months ago, saving thousands of lives, particularly in Gaza. Mr. President, we have all welcomed the announcement of the ceasefire, and Pakistan appreciates the patient mediatory efforts that have been made by Qatar, by Egypt, and by the United States to achieve the agreement for a cessation of hostilities in Gaza. In particular, we extend our admiration to His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani, the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Qatar, for the resilience and diplomatic skill with which he steered the parties towards the conclusion of this agreement. Pakistan hopes that all stages of this ceasefire agreement will be fully implemented and that the ceasefire will become permanent. We are concerned by Israeli threats to resume its military attacks in Gaza. We hope also that the Palestinians will be able to agree on arrangements for Gaza's inclusive and effective governance. Mr. President, the international community must now urgently address the humanitarian crisis created by Israel's destruction, its blockade of Gaza, and its deliberate strategy of starvation of its population. All crossing points must be opened and all UN and other humanitarian agencies allowed to provide humanitarian sustenance to the besieged, displaced, and suffering Palestinians in Gaza. Israel's attempts to shut down UNRWA, the agency which provides a critical lifeline to the Palestinians, must be vigorously opposed by the Security Council and the international community. Mr. President, Pakistan will do all it can to assist the besieged and suffering Palestinians in Gaza. Secondly, the displaced Palestinians must be enabled to return to their homes, including in North Gaza, and to restore their devastated lives. Third, Israel must be obliged to withdraw its forces from Gaza as envisaged in the ceasefire agreement. Their presence is illegal and must be ended to ensure the restoration of peace in Gaza and the rehabilitation of its displaced people and its early reconstruction. Fourth, the international community should assist the Palestinians to develop a concrete plan for Gaza's reconstruction as envisaged in Security Council Resolution 2735, which was initiated by the United States. This plan should be implemented expeditiously with adequate international support. Fifth, and most importantly, the international community, including the Security Council, must work to restore international legitimacy and sustainable peace in Palestine and the wider Middle East. Accountability for the crimes committed in this brutal war must be an essential element in restoring international legitimacy. Mr. President, the most critical step in building sustainable peace is the revival of the political and diplomatic process to achieve a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinian people. This must be based on two fundamental principles of the UN Charter, endorsed by several resolutions of the Security Council and the International Court of Justice. One, the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, and two, the non-acquisition of territory by the use of force. Despite the expansionist ambitions of some Israeli politicians, despite the devastation and destruction wrought by Israel's war machine, despite the skepticism of some intellectuals, the two-state solution remains the most promising, equitable, and we believe feasible framework for durable peace between Israel, the Palestinians, and the Arab and Muslim world. Indeed, Israel's existence, flowing from General Assembly Resolution 181, can be legitimized only if there exists a separate and sovereign Palestinian state. The alternative is prolonged and brutal military occupation, revived violent resistance, and perpetual conflict in the Holy Land, which would continue to afflict the entire Middle East and poison the relations between Israel and the Arab and Muslim world. An inclusive political process is essential to advance the realization of the two-state solution. Pakistan will work to promote such a solution as a member of the Global Alliance for Implementation of the Two-State Solution. This outcome should be made politically inevitable. The state of Palestine must be recognized by all UN member states and admitted as a full member of the United Nations. In this context, we welcome the General Assembly's decision in Resolutions 79/81 to convene a high-level international conference in June 2025 on the implementation of the relevant UN resolutions pertaining to the two-state solution. Mr. President, to achieve comprehensive peace in the Middle East, it is also essential to simultaneously address other threats to peace and security in the region, as the Secretary General has mentioned. Pakistan welcomes the agreement facilitated by France and the United States for a cessation of hostilities in Lebanon. We congratulate President Joseph Aoun on his election and Mr. Nawaf Salam on his designation as the Prime Minister of Lebanon. Israeli forces must withdraw from South Lebanon within the stipulated 60 days. The Lebanese army is ready to deploy there in accordance with Security Council Resolution 1701. Israel must halt its continuing attacks in Lebanon, which are blatant violations of the 26 November agreement. Pakistan supports the stabilization of Syria through an inclusive political process and governance. Terrorism must not be allowed to re-emerge in or from Syria. We must uphold Syria's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. Israel must withdraw immediately from the separation zone established under the 1974 disengagement agreement. It must also withdraw from the occupied Syrian Golan Heights in accordance with Security Council Resolutions 242, 338, and 497. We call for a halt to the Israeli and other airstrikes against Yemen, as well as an end to the attacks from Yemen on international shipping. We hope that a ceasefire in Gaza will help to end these attacks and revive the interrupted political process in Yemen. Mr. President, the Council must also be concerned at the reported contemplation of further Israeli attacks against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Today, despite the hostile rhetoric, there is an opportunity to revive the JCPOA on equitable terms. This window of opportunity must not be missed. This would contribute significantly to realizing durable peace and security across the entire Middle East. Mr. President, the Israeli Prime Minister has proclaimed that Israel, and I quote, has changed the face of the Middle East, unquote. But Israel has not and cannot change its soul. A soul which continues to seek justice as well as peace. Even in this altered strategic landscape, the Arab and Muslim peoples will not relent in their quest for peace with justice and for equal rights for the Palestinian people, including their right to self-determination and statehood. I thank you, Mr. President.